DMD chants and the DMD pop was deafening tonight. And
say that again.
Were
brother.
they ever, man? The DMD chants were deafening tonight, and that was, and we knew that was coming. And it's you pair her against the top heel, one of the top heels in the women's division, Nyla Rose, which it would be hard for me. I can't see Nyla as a babyface personally. So that's a challenge to her that I want to see that kind of transformation. So we can keep DMD a heel. And it was great to see Rebel come out there and kind of assist her and do some things like that. But she retained in a convincing way at the end. The overall match was not as executed as well as I expected. But you take down, as you say, the gatekeeper. You definitely have a notch in your belt that not many people do have. So props to the DMD for her first successful title defense versus the gatekeeper Nyla Rose. I got that peanut butter and tuna stuck.
You all right, bud? Yeah, you all right? Bonds, before I go on my everybody's favorite segment of the week, the crayfish DMD
the 20-minute
rant.
DMD segment.
What go ahead, jump in a little bit.
Yeah.
Give us your breakdown of the match itself, right? Because me, I felt like the character work, and I'm more intrigued by how this impacts DMD long term, and I feel like I'm really on board with this chapter closing. It was great for Britt to get that W against Nyla, which has kind of been that kind of hanging over her head, that Britt's never had that big W. She's kind of had that, she lost to Thunder. She lost to Nyla in the tournament. A lot of people wondering, can Britt really hold her own in the ring? For me, this was a big moment for Britt to kind of get that W, check that off the list, and move on to the next one. And it also allowed Britt to kind of experiment into the babyface realm and see how that went, because Nyla is, as SPD said, Nyla is very much a heel in the landscape of the company. There's just no way around it. The native beast is a dominant force. And so having her against the DMD allowed us to get a taste for what Britt Baker as a babyface could be like. Yep. But I personally, I had to talk myself off the ledge. I see that this is more of just an appetizer of potential down the road. I think that they're gonna pivot after Nyla Rose, and Britt will bring her edge back with her next feud. Let's talk before we get into that portion of it, though, and before we get into how this impacts the women's division and the DMD, everyone's favorite, moving forward. I want to hear your take on the match itself, because you're our lead writer. I want to hear how you would break this one down.
I personally didn't really enjoy this match, unfortunately. It really felt flat for me. It was very slow paced, felt sloppy, and I don't think the pairing of Britt Baker and Nyla Rose worked from a technical standpoint, which is unfortunate and disappointing for her first title defense. Mm-hmm. It just felt like they were both looked winded after about halfway through. After the picture-in-picture, the match looked over, and it just looked like the offense on both sides wasn't clicking correctly. It just looked like something was off. Towards the end of the match, I don't know if you guys saw this as well, but it felt like everything at the end, like for the last 2 minutes or so of the match, looked like they were just kind of going through the motions, trying to find a spot to be done on. And it just didn't flow well. Like it didn't feel like a title match. It felt like just a random match on Dark. It didn't feel like there wasn't any hype or pressure. There was hype from the crowd, and there was hype from Britt early on, but it just didn't. It felt like a transitional feud, and it needed to not feel like that because it's for a title. Right. And I was just disappointed in it overall.
I think what do you guys think? I think that's fair, man. Sure. As the resident DMD fanboy here, I've always tried to defend Britt's in-ring work. Yeah, and I was hoping that a victory over the gatekeeper of the division would kind of silence some more critics, right? Unfortunately, although it's a W in the record books, it just kind of felt like this one never shifted into the next gear. Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. It just didn't feel like Nyla felt comfortable, and I don't know why that's the case, right? I don't know if Nyla is the type, and some people are just like this. Like Nyla maybe is better if she's a front runner, right? Like if she's somebody who she knows is going to be dominant and who's going to get the W and can toss you around and exert her, make it her style match. And maybe you get a different side of Nyla out of that. But, you know, we saw Britt basically, Bonds, you've said it, Britt eviscerate Nyla last week. I mean, like it was cold-blooded. Some of that promo, like it felt like she was like gutting Nyla in front of the world last week. And maybe there's something there. Maybe there's just like Nyla just didn't have that it going into the match. And if that's like, I love that if that's the story, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm overanalyzing, but I think that maybe the DMD got into Nyla's head a little bit because she certainly seemed shook. She didn't seem like the native beast that I've been used to seeing. It didn't. You know, there have been times in this feud it didn't feel like these two were clicking. But in
the whole feud, it felt like that.
In the ring, I feel like that was even more evident. And I don't know if that's because you have two alphas who are going toe-to-toe against each other. And SPD, you know, we're seeing when we talk about the women's division, there are certain women who jump out to you as people who are alpha personalities who won't back down. Right. You know, I would think Jade is that type of persona as well, right? But on that short list, Nyla and the DMD are certainly there. And so maybe there was a little bit of that butting of the heads. Now, there were moments that worked, right? There were moments in this match that worked. And, you know, to me, I enjoyed the Rebel DMD, the continuation of that story. I personally think that there's a lot there between Rebel and Britt, and I like that, and I want that to continue to be a part of the DMD's rise to greatness, is her using Rebel in a lot of ways. And I think that Rebel getting involved in this match helped the overall match. It led to some of the cool moments, right? Where we saw the Eddie Guerrero spot with the title belts getting tossed. Love that. That was cool. And it was one of the moments where a referee distraction actually made sense and helped the product rather than detracted from it, which I know is a huge criticism of yours, Bonds, is when the referees are incompetent and like we saw in the Orange Cassidy
Sean
Blade.
Spears tapping out for 15 seconds.
That Orange Cassidy Blade, it wasn't. It was the Frankie Kazarian and Luke Gallows match where literally even JR was like, you don't see Carl Anderson hugging Frankie Kazarian off on the apron. You don't just see him grabbing him from behind. Like even JR had to say something. But this was a moment where the referee distraction made sense. Yeah. It helped the story. And it worked. I think everybody out there, I even though we try to pride ourselves on being a very positive discussion, a positive forum for AEW, I think everybody out there, SPD, is ready for Britt to move on to a new challenger. Now, whether that's Ty Conti, Chris Statlander, Thunder Rosa, there's a lot of names that would certainly get people intrigued again. But I feel like this feud, I'm glad that it's over with. I'm excited to see what Britt's championship reign has in store beyond the Native Beast.